Greetings, travelers of time and wonder. Before we step into the ancient mystery unfolding in the sky above us, take a moment to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next sign in the heavens. If you find yourself drawn into this quiet unraveling of the past, leave a comment below. Tell us where in the world you're watching from and what time it is as you begin this journey. And if this story resonates with you, if the title already sparks something deeper, share this video with someone who might understand. Because what you're about to hear is not just a tale, it's a pattern returning. A comet has appeared where no comet should be, and with it, something older than memory begins to stir. The Sumerians would have called it the Red Wanderer, a sign they believed foretold the return of beings from beyond the known sky. Today, astronomers observe an object that does not behave like other comets. It moves against the grain, with a slow elegance that betrays no clear origin. They named it 3i Atlas, a label stitched from modern cataloguing systems. Yet its path carries echoes of stories written in clay and watched by firelight millennia ago. From the ruins of old cities to the data streams of today's observatories, a strange thread of continuity seems to whisper through time. Long before the world had names for stars or machines to track them, there were people who watched the sky in reverence and fear. The Sumerians, among the oldest astronomer priests in recorded history, spent their nights observing the shifting tapestry of lights above. They were not passive watchers. They believed the stars spoke a language of warning and renewal. Patterns meant messages, and motion foretold upheaval. One object, always described with a peculiar unease, moved unlike any other, slower than a comet, brighter than a wandering planet, and never staying long in memory. They marked it with a symbol, a circle and a tail, carved into clay, passed down with warnings and prayers. To them, it was a harbinger of cycles, floods, rulers rising or falling, dark skies, and change no mortal could halt. In the deserts of what we now call Mesopotamia, they gathered in silence as the light passed overhead. They did not name it for curiosity's sake. They named it because they believed it carried intention. The Red Wanderer was no lifeless rock. It was a returning agent of prophecy, and the sky was its parchment. Every generation feared its return, for with it came the presence of those called the Anunnaki beings, of impossible knowledge, who once walked with humans in the forgotten dawn. The Sumerians said these beings came from a place beyond the wind, a direction that does not exist in our maps, but echoes through their texts like the hush before a storm. When the Wanderer appeared, it was never alone. It was a herald. Today, the object called 3i Atlas displays behavior that puzzles and unsettles modern science. It brightens earlier than predicted. Its acceleration mismatches gravitational expectations, and its trajectory breaks the known laws of solar dynamics. It is not behaving like a natural object. Some researchers call these anomalies non-gravitational influences. Others whisper, half in jest, about artificial movement. But ancient scribes did not need equations to feel something was wrong. They wrote of stars that stopped, pulsed, changed speed, and then vanished. Their tools were simple eyes, tablets of memory, but their records are astonishingly precise. And now, when the sky offers a similar performance, the past and present seem to reflect each other across time. One tablet, recovered from beneath the ruins of Nibiru, shows a priest pointing upward as the Red Wanderer passes above. His face is carved in fear, not awe. He does not worship the light. He warns of it. The Sumerians did not treat these events as myths. They treated them as celestial contracts, deals struck across centuries with forces that watched from the dark. They believed that when the Red Wanderer returned, it marked the opening of a great cycle, one that would rethread the fate of the world. Those cycles were not metaphorical to them. They were counted in stars and storms, in the collapse of empires and the rise of unexpected kings. And when the light came again, it meant the gods were watching once more. There is a strange comfort in believing the past is just story. But the uncanny parallels between the ancient accounts and the object now called Three-Eye Atlas challenge that comfort. In both tales, the wanderer brightens unexpectedly. It drifts slowly against the stars, halts, then resumes its path with deliberate motion. Scientists measure brightness, acceleration, and trajectory. The ancients measured consequence, yet the patterns remain, written once in stone. Now, in data, one speaks in myth, the other in metrics, but both say the same thing. Something is coming. Among amateur astronomers and digital sky watchers, forums buzz with unease. It's not just the object's movement, it's the feeling it evokes. A sense that this comet is not just drifting, that it is returning. Not everyone believes in prophecy, of course, but the human mind, ancient or modern, is hardwired to recognize pattern. And when the same pattern repeats across 5,000 years, even skeptics grow quiet. The Sumerians believed the wanderer marked not just events, but intentions, that it acted not randomly, but with the silent purpose of old cycles reawakening. What modern eyes see as coincidence, the Sumerians saw as message. In their world, the sky was not a passive dome of stars. It was alive. It warned. It remembered. And it repeated. The reappearance of the wanderer did not simply predict disaster. It reactivated something buried deep in time, a contract between heavens and earth, between watchers above and wanderers below. Three-Eye Atlas, if truly following the ancient path, is more than a comet. It is a key turning in a cosmic lock. The question is not whether it returns, but what it returns with. And so we stand at a crossroads, both ancient and modern. Beneath a sky as old as time, yet filled with instruments our ancestors could not imagine. The object shines brighter with each night, its tail sweeping across star maps once carved into clay. Whether you are a believer in prophecy or a student of physics, the truth remains the same. Something strange has returned to the sky, and somewhere, in the long silence between galaxies, perhaps something else stirs in response. The first light of the prophecy may already be here. There is one final detail. The ancient priests recorded a strange phrase repeated across temples. Z, Anunnaki, Amagi. Loosely translated, it means life returns from sky to earth. They etched it beside images of a great arc of light descending from the heavens, always near the wanderer's symbol. To them, this moment was not merely one of fear, but one of transformation. Not all saw it as doom. Some saw it as renewal. They believed that each return of the wanderer offered a chance, however fleeting, for humanity to be reshaped by forgotten truths. That perhaps, when the heavens opened, knowledge lost for millennia could flow back into the world. Maybe that is what stirs now, not only watchers in the dark, but memory itself, something we once knew, now rising again in the silence of the stars. Across the scattered ruins of the ancient world, a single symbol appears again and again, etched into clay, carved into stone, painted in pigment that still clings to crumbled walls, a circle with a long sweeping tail. For the Sumerians, this was not merely a celestial body. It was the Red Wanderer, a sign not of beauty, but of reckoning. In every instance, it pointed to something more than astronomy. It pointed to judgment. And at the center of that judgment were the Anunnaki, those mysterious figures the ancient priests called the Old Teachers. The Red Wanderer did not move alone. Its path signaled their return. The Sumerians did not speak of gods as mere abstractions. The Anunnaki were described with specificity, tall, radiant, draped in garments that shimmered like liquid light. Their eyes were deep and distant, like they had seen the end of time. They walked among the first cities, not as conquerors, but as guides. They taught early humans how to dig irrigation channels, how to divide the sky into meaningful patterns, and how to measure time itself. But their guidance came with a condition. It was tied to the cycles of the heavens. When the sky showed the sign, the Anunnaki returned to see how the world had changed. The Red Wanderer was their signal. Its path across the heavens marked not just time, but fate. When it appeared, the Sumerians believed the Anunnaki emerged from their hidden places. Some texts describe them descending upon high mounds that shine, while others say they rose from the dark waters beneath the land. Whatever the imagery, the meaning was consistent. The Anunnaki arrived to pass judgment not in fire and wrath, but in silence and decision. They were watchers, not tyrants, and the world, in their eyes, was a test. The priests feared the wanderer because it always preceded change. Floods were recorded just after its appearance. Plagues were chronicled. Empires that had stood for generations collapsed in a single season. To the modern mind, these seem like natural disasters or political coincidence. But to the Sumerians, they were the unfolding of a celestial order. The Anunnaki did not cause destruction. They allowed the cycle to resume. They were agents of balance. When humanity grew corrupt or complacent, the wanderer appeared, and with it came correction. Modern astronomers speak a different language, yet their data reveals a strange echo. 3-Eye Atlas. The object, currently moving through our sky, mimics the anomalies recorded in ancient texts. Its motion breaks expectations. It accelerates when it should drift. It glows when models say it should fade. These are not minor inconsistencies. They are profound deviations from known cometary behavior. And in scientific papers, there is quiet speculation, phrases like unknown origin or possible non-natural trajectory that hint at deeper unease. What if this object is not acting on its own? What if, like the ancients believed, it is part of something larger? One rare tablet, preserved in the British Museum but seldom displayed, describes the Red Wanderer as a breath drawn by the sky before it speaks. This poetic line puzzled translators for decades, until an astronomer compared the phrasing to solar wind patterns. The idea that the comet is part of a communication, a celestial signal, has taken quiet root among fringe researchers. And if that is true, it aligns eerily with the Sumerian belief that the Anunnaki respond not to humanity's rituals, but to cosmic timing. When the sign returns, so too do they. The priests of Sumer recorded more than sky charts. They told stories of councils held in silence, of tall figures watching cities from afar, of a judgment rendered not in words but in motion. One myth speaks of a night when the Anunnaki stood on a mountain of black glass and looked down upon the earth. They did not speak. They simply observed. Then, one by one, they vanished into the mist. And weeks later, a river changed its path. A drought ended. A king fell. And a new city rose, where none had stood before. This was the rhythm of their return. Subtle, decisive, undeniable. Not all the myths are so calm. Some describe moments of terror, lights appearing in the sky where no stars belonged, a sound like stone cracking across the heavens, animals fleeing without cause. These events were linked to the wanderer and the beings who followed it. When the sign appeared too early or too brightly, it meant imbalance, a warning that the judgment to come would be severe. And now, as 3-Eye Atlas accelerates and brightens faster than expected, some begin to wonder, are we once again entering a moment of imbalance? Other civilizations, too, spoke of sky beings who visited and returned only when the heavens shifted. In early Vedic texts, divine watchers were said to arrive when the star of return crossed the eastern sky. In ancient Anatolia, stone markers align with celestial paths, similar to those mapped in Sumerian records. Even the oldest Chinese sky charts mention a red star that brightened and dimmed unlike any other, signaling the arrival of beings from behind the wind. These are not isolated fables. They are fragments of a larger pattern, a memory encoded in myth and stone, in ritual and rhythm. In modern times, we have become used to thinking of ancient stories as metaphors. But what if they are records? What if the myths are memories fragmented, mythologized, but grounded in real events? Cultures separated by oceans spoke of beings from the sky. of watchers who guided and then vanished. If the Anunnaki were real, their return would not come with fanfare. It would come with a light in the sky, a change in the wind, a silence that grows heavier by the day, just as it did before. 3i Atlas may be a comet. It may be something else, but its presence has reignited a story humanity tried to forget. The Sumerians left behind not just warnings, but a framework, a way to understand the rhythms of the sky, and the visitors who once shaped the world. Whether we choose to believe them or not, the signs continue, and in their quiet movement, we are reminded that history is not always behind us. Sometimes, it returns from the stars, long before cities spread across river valleys, long before the first laws were written, and long before the world drew borders on maps. There were people who lived close to the earth and looked to the stars with wonder. These early humans built shrines from mud and stone, watched eclipses with fearful reverence, and marked time by the slow procession of the heavens. But according to the Sumerians, they were not alone. The myths speak of a time when the Anunnaki walked among humans, not as spirits or visions, but as beings of presence, guides who brought with them knowledge so advanced it appeared as magic. These weren't merely gods of thunder or grain. The Anunnaki were said to be teachers, civilizers, who shaped the very foundation of human society. They instructed people how to irrigate land, how to organize communities, how to build with geometry, and how to measure the sky with startling precision. In the tablets of Eridu and Lagash, the oldest cities of Mesopotamia, the stories are remarkably consistent. Knowledge was not discovered, it was given, and the ones who gave it stood taller than any man, wore garments that shimmered in starlight, and spoke with voices that echoed across stone courtyards. In temple carvings that still survive today, we see scenes of these old teachers holding strange objects, discs, rods, bags that seem to hang weightlessly from their hands. Archaeologists call them symbols. Some believe they represent grain or ritual tools, but to others, these objects look like instruments of measurement or devices whose function is long forgotten. The Sumerians did not depict them with weapons. They depicted them with tools. And these tools, the myths say, built the first kingdom, an era when humans and the Anunnaki lived side by side, and knowledge was not earned by trial, but shared through guidance. This kingdom was not eternal. The stories tell of a time when the Anunnaki withdrew, leaving their cities behind. Some myths say it was due to a disagreement among themselves, a split in philosophy over how much knowledge humans should be allowed to keep. Others speak of a cosmic shift, the end of a cycle that forced the Anunnaki to retreat beyond the sky. But they did not erase their presence. They left behind architecture that defies explanation, texts that still resist translation, and legends so enduring they reappear in different cultures across time. From Egypt to Central America to ancient India, the myth of sky-born teachers repeats with uncanny similarity. Consider the ziggurats of ancient Sumer. These step towers were aligned with celestial events to a degree that suggests astronomical knowledge far beyond the expected capacity of early civilizations. They weren't simply temples, they were observatories, places where heaven and earth were said to meet. In the ruins of Ur, one inscription describes the temple not as a house of worship, but as a ladder between the stars. The phrase echoes in later mythologies: the Tower of Babel, Jacob's ladder, the Axis Mundi, all symbols of a bridge between worlds, all possibly rooted in the memory of the Old Kingdom. Even the earliest maps of the stars found on clay tablets in Mesopotamia are remarkably precise. They include knowledge of precession and lunar cycles that would require generations of observations or an outside source. Skeptics argue that human ingenuity alone is enough to explain this. And perhaps it is. But the Sumerians themselves did not make that claim. They said their teachers came from the sky and brought with them the secrets of the stars. To dismiss the source they gave while accepting the data they recorded is a strange contradiction. There are ruins in the ancient world that resist explanation. In parts of Anatolia, massive stone blocks are fitted together without mortar, cut with angles so precise that modern machines struggle to replicate them. In South America, similar patterns appear. Structures dated far earlier than expected seem to emerge fully formed. Without evidence of developmental architecture, the Sumerians would not have been surprised. They believed the old teachers could shape stone by command, and that such feats were not products of force, but of frequency and knowledge forces modern science is only beginning to explore. Some fringe researchers speak of forgotten technology. Others suggest an early civilization wiped from history by disaster. But the stories from Sumer don't describe lost cities. They describe a kingdom paused. The Anunnaki left. But not forever. They would return. The priest said, when the Red Wanderer came back. That was the signal. That was the key. When the sky changed, the old teachers would walk again, and the doors of their kingdom would open once more. In a crumbling temple wall in southern Iraq, a carving still stands, a figure taller than the rest, flanked by lions, holding a device shaped like an hourglass. Above him is the symbol of the Wanderer, a circle with a long tail. Beneath him, people kneel not in worship, but in waiting. The Sumerians didn't fear the return. They prepared for it. They recorded it, and they left clues for those who would look upward when the signs began again. A lesser-known myth from the city of Sippar tells of a hidden vault buried beneath a mound of stars. The story claims that before the Anunnaki left, they sealed their tools of wisdom within chambers that only open when the sky calls its mirror from beyond the wind. The language is strange, but it speaks to a recurring belief that the knowledge once shared is not lost, only dormant. When the sky speaks again, the vault will open, and with it, the memory of the kingdom will awaken. Three-Eye Atlas now moves through our sky in a path that mirrors those same symbols, those same cycles. It is not only astronomers who notice. Artists, poets, ordinary people feel something different in the air, a sense of returning, a memory unspoken. If the Anunnaki were real, and if their kingdom once stood, then perhaps what was lost was never truly gone. Perhaps it waits, hidden beneath dust and myth, for the sky to send the sign again. There is an old Sumerian legend passed down in fragments, pieced together from broken tablets and half-lost chants, whispered in the flicker of lamplight. It speaks of a city not found on any ancient map, a place not ruled by kings or priests, but by light. This city, they said, was not destroyed, it was sealed. Built by the Anunnaki themselves, it was hidden not by war or ruin, but by design. It was known by many names: the Quiet Kingdom, the City of Knowing, the Gate Beneath the Stars, but the most enduring name was simply the Place of Return. The city, according to the legend, shimmered with a light that never faded, a soft radiance that came not from fire or sun, but from something deeper, an energy that pulsed through the stone like blood through veins. Its buildings were not stacked but grown, shaped by forces that no tool could replicate. Walls bore no seams, arches stood not on tension, but on frequency. Floors hummed when stepped upon, and water ran uphill without force. It was a city of balance, where earth and sky met in silent agreement, where knowledge flowed like wind, and where the Anunnaki shared their last gifts before retreating from the world. The gifts of the sky were not mere ideas. They were tangible, objects made from materials not yet identified by modern science. In carvings and bas-reliefs, these artifacts are shown again and again, small tablets etched with radiant lines, circular lenses that glowed when exposed to flame, rods that floated between hands without touch. They were called instruments of the stars and measures of the deep. The Sumerians believed these objects held the power to unlock not only the secrets of the heavens, but also the inner architecture of the human mind. Some could store thought, others could measure the breath of the wind and the heartbeat of the ground. In one rare text, from the city of Shurupak, a tablet describes the moment the Anunnaki left their kingdom. It says, "They turned the light inward, sealed the gate, and covered the way with dust and memory." It speaks of a final act, the placing of symbols that would only awaken when the sky repeated the pattern. That pattern, the priests believed, was inscribed not only in stars, but in the motion of comets, the color of the horizon, the timing of solar eclipses. These were the keys to finding the lost city. Some scholars dismiss this as myth. Others point to archaeological anomalies that resist explanation. In southern Iraq, researchers have uncovered tunnels carved with impossible precision, smooth turns, sharp lines, and fused surfaces that suggest heat beyond known ancient technologies. Stones along these walls emit low electromagnetic pulses, though they bear no metal. When lit by fire, certain markings along the ceiling reflect patterns that match ancient star maps, but only when seen from specific angles. These sites are often labeled as prehistoric ceremonial spaces, but the details tell a deeper story, one that suggests function rather than symbolism. Further afield, similar signs appear. In Peru, Bolivia, Turkey, and the Indus Valley, ruins show the same combination of impossible architecture and celestial alignment: circular tablets with spiral inscriptions, pathways cut through stone that curve not for terrain, but for alignment with constellations visible thousands of years ago. These sites may not be the hidden city itself, but echoes of it, places built by those who remembered the kingdom, or who tried to recreate it in distant lands. If the Anunnaki shared their knowledge once, it is not unthinkable that fragments of their legacy scattered far beyond Sumer. A detail that recurs often is the use of firelight to reveal glyphs that are otherwise invisible. These symbols, faint and hidden during the day, glow with clarity when warmed by open flame. Some pulse slowly, as if reacting to the heat itself. The Sumerians called them the whispers in the stone. They believed the city itself was alive in some way, not in thought, but in purpose, that it was waiting. The tablets imply that the city was not just built as a refuge or a capital, but as a vault for knowledge, a container for something too vast to give freely. The return of the Red Wanderer, they believed, would begin the process of unlocking it again. The city would not appear suddenly in light or sound. It would rise slowly from memory, clue by clue, sign by sign. And once the signs began to align, once the sky spoke the right pattern, the seal would begin to crack. Some even claimed the city could only be seen by those who knew how to look, that its gates were visible only under rare sky conditions. When the stars mirrored the earth in perfect rhythm, Three-Eye Atlas, with its strange brightness and unexplainable movement, may be one such sign. Its path cuts through constellations linked in Sumerian prophecy. It passed closest to Earth on the anniversary of an ancient festival, once held to honor the return of the gods. Its light has revealed patterns in the sky not seen since Babylon's fall. And its trail, when mapped, mirrors the curve of ancient roadways found beneath modern cities, roads that lead nowhere above ground, but intersect directly beneath unexplained stone chambers. What if the ancient city is not entirely buried? What if parts of it exist beneath the cities we've built over them, beneath Basra, Baghdad, and the endless fields of southern Mesopotamia? The Sumerians warned that we would forget the path, but they also believed that the path would find us again, drawn upward by the returning light. Not by war or disaster, but by recognition, a stirring of something deep in the mind, old as sleep. In the end, the gifts of the sky may not be metal or energy or secrets of machines. They may be reminders, triggers of memory, keys to a kind of awareness that was once known and then lost. If the city beneath the stars was real, then perhaps its rediscovery does not come through excavation, but through alignment between earth, sky, and thought. As the Red Wanderer brightens, the gate may already be opening, and the gifts once given may be preparing to return again. In the oldest surviving texts from Sumer, a word appears again and again, with ominous weight: Nibiru. It was not a name spoken casually. It carried the gravity of a forgotten world, one that moved in silence through the outer dark of the cosmos. The Sumerians described it as a shining body of judgment, a planet or star that completed its vast journey only once in many ages. It did not reside among the familiar 7 wandering stars of ancient astronomy. It lived beyond them, in a region the Sumerians poetically called the Dark Sea behind the wind. And when it came near, everything changed. Unlike the predictable orbits of known planets, Nibiru was believed to follow a wide arc, one that dipped far below the plane of normal celestial motion. Its return was never sudden, but its consequences always were. The Sumerians believed that when Nibiru approached, it brought with it a kind of pressure, not just physical, but spiritual. Seasons lost their rhythm. Rains failed or flooded without warning. Stars flickered unnaturally. And always, the appearance of Nibiru coincided with the Red Wanderer, the first sign. The warning light that came just before the world stood at a threshold. The moment when these two bodies appeared together was called the crossing. In many translated texts, this event is symbolized by 2 curved lines intersecting beneath a sky glyph. One light was the signal. The other was the force. The first prepared the world. The second tested it. According to the priests, the crossing was more than a celestial alignment. It was a doorway between ages. When Earth stood between these 2 great lights, it stood in judgment, not by fire or flood, but by the weight of what it had become. To modern astronomers, the existence of a distant, massive planet influencing the orbits of smaller trans-Neptunian objects is more than a theory. It's a mathematical probability. The idea of a Planet 9 has gained traction as irregularities in distant bodies suggest the presence of something unseen. Its orbit, if it exists, would be so stretched and elongated that it might take tens of thousands of years to complete one cycle. This theoretical planet exerts influence without being visible, a trait eerily similar to the ancient descriptions of Nibiru. It's not what we see, it's what it moves. And now, 3i Atlas cuts through the sky with motion that defies comet logic. It brightens too early. Its tail shifts oddly in the solar wind, and its trajectory bends against expectations. Some researchers quietly propose that its path may be influenced by another object, something massive, far beyond the reach of current telescopes. If such a body exists, its gravitational field could explain much of what remains unspoken in official reports. To the Sumerians, that would mean one thing. Nibiru has turned again toward the inner worlds. In one temple hymn to the god Enlil, a verse speaks of 2 fires drawn across the dome of heaven, and of earth tilting softly in their breath. The Sumerians measured such events not in hours, but in omens, when the Red Wanderer appeared, and Nibiru followed. That was the mark of the turning age. People did not wait for war or disaster. They watched their animals. Birds flew in patterns that made no sense. Dogs refused to sleep. Crops bent without wind. These were the early signs that the crossing was beginning. The stories say that, during the last full cycle, when Nibiru returned and the Red Wanderer burned bright, the Great Flood was unleashed. It was not sent by anger, but as a reset, an enforced quiet in which the world could begin again. Some clay tablets describe the Anunnaki meeting atop a high stone mountain, watching the floodwaters rise. Others depict them not as saviors, but as recorders preserving the knowledge of the old world in vaults beneath the earth, to be opened only when the sign returned. In recent years, observations in the outer solar system have revealed other anomalies, distant objects with clustered orbits, unusual tilts in the solar plane, and energy fluctuations that cannot be explained by known forces, while mainstream science treads carefully. Some independent researchers suggest that the data hints at a celestial object whose influence stretches like a tide felt but not seen. And if that object is real, then it may be what the Sumerians described as Nibiru, a world that returns not with spectacle, but with consequence. What makes this moment different is not just the presence of 3i Atlas, it is the alignment of other signs. In ancient calendars, the crossing was marked by twin lights reaching their highest points above Earth's horizon. That rare event, an alignment between a visible comet and an invisible mass, is echoed now in the unusual gravitational behavior observed across deep space surveys. More than coincidence, It feels like memory resurfacing through math. In remote deserts, from Chile to the Australian outback, independent observatories have tracked a subtle shift in background stellar positions. Small, almost imperceptible, but consistent. These shifts, when plotted, trace a curve, the same kind of arc that appears in star maps found in Sumerian temples. The ancients mapped the heavens not for beauty, but for warning. Their ziggurats were not only shrines but instruments of timing, designed to mark the moment when the crossing returned. There are myths from other cultures too. In Vedic tradition, the god Vishnu is said to ride the sky serpent during the Age of Correction. In Mesoamerican lore, the sky opens when the twin stars align, allowing the watchers of the deep night to observe humanity's progress. These myths, once separated by continents, now feel like different ways of describing the same event, a cycle of return, a crossing of forces, a test of the world. If Nibiru truly exists, and if its long arc is drawing closer once more, then we may already be within the zone of influence the ancients feared and revered. The Sumerians believed that when Earth entered the space between these lights, it would be like a scale tipping, not toward destruction necessarily, but toward revelation. Secrets would rise, knowledge long buried would stir, and choices would have to be made. The Red Wanderer has returned. If Nibiru follows, then we are approaching the crossing again. And just like before, the sky will ask its silent question. Who are we now? And are we ready for what comes next? Among the oldest and most cryptic tablets recovered from the ruins of Mesopotamia is one attributed to the god Enki, a figure both feared and revered in Sumerian cosmology. Enki was called the Wise One, the Keeper of the Deep, and above all, the Teacher of Balance. Unlike Enlil, who ruled with strict order, Enki stood for adaptability, curiosity, and evolution. His role in the myths was often to mediate between humanity and the gods, to protect life where others wished to erase it, and to share knowledge, albeit carefully. One of the tablets bearing his name speaks not of rituals or laws, but of stars. It tells of a moment when two fires cross above the world, and when that happens, the sky breathes and balance shifts. Well, this tablet, often overlooked for more dramatic myths, contains a prophecy so precise it reads more like astronomical record than religious verse. The text speaks of the appearance of the first fire star, believed to be the Red Wanderer, and the anticipation of a second, more powerful light that follows. The second fire star, according to the translation, does not announce itself. It waits. It watches the first, and when they align, the age turns. The precision of the language distances, timings, directional flow has led some researchers to suggest the scribe was not writing myth, but observing something real, something witnessed. In the same document, the Sumerians describe how the first fire star serves as a signal, a trigger that prepares the world. But it is only when the second appears that the Council of the Sky opens. That phrase, Council of the Sky, appears nowhere else in Sumerian literature. It is believed to refer to a gathering of celestial bodies, a convergence of great forces whose meeting marks the end of one order and the birth of another. Some interpret this as poetic allegory. Others, especially those familiar with Three-Eye Atlas and its strange behavior, wonder if the alignment has already begun. The second fire star is described not as a comet or planet, but as a silent traveler of strength, one that glows dim until it nears the crossing point. Ancient drawings found on temple walls in Sippar show two circles, a smaller, radiant one and a larger, darker one, surrounded by intricate spiral patterns. The smaller one is clearly the Red Wanderer. The larger is unlabeled, but always appears behind it. This companion light, hidden in shadow, is associated with judgment and change. When it draws near, the texts say, the path of the gods becomes the path of men. If Three-Eye Atlas is the first fire star, then the question arises, where is the second? Could it be Nibiru? Still unseen. still beyond the edge of telescopic range? Or is it something yet unrecognized, an object whose approach cannot be measured by conventional instruments? Some scientists believe that deep in the outer solar system, a massive object with irregular mass could exist in a slow inbound arc. If true, it would explain many of the orbital anomalies already being tracked. To the ancient priests, this wouldn't be a discovery. It would be a return. The Enki tablet also describes the effects of the alignment. It says that when the two lights draw near, the waters of the world stir without cause. The birds change their direction, and the sleeping stone begins to speak. While symbolic, these phrases eerily match modern observations: unexplained magnetic shifts, disruptions in migratory patterns, and stone formations that resonate faintly with energy when the sky aligns in specific ways. In recent years, low-frequency vibrations have been recorded in ancient temples during celestial events. These signals are usually dismissed as background noise, but the ancients may have known to listen. What makes Enki's message even more remarkable is its tone. Unlike later texts that speak of wrath or cleansing, this prophecy speaks of choice. It says that when the second firestar arrives, humanity will stand at the fork of two roads. One path returns to dust, the other to light. This is not about destruction, it is about direction. The second firestar is not a weapon, it is a mirror. It reflects what the world has become and what it may yet become. In the closing lines of the tablet, Enki warns that, when the two fires touch, the gate opens, and what was sealed awakens. He does not name what lies behind the gate, but the word used, sargal, meaning binding of the stars, implies something immense, something kept hidden until the right moment. Scholars have debated its meaning for generations. Is it knowledge? Is it a return of the Anunnaki? Is it a new force rising from the fusion of celestial energy? The text does not say. It only urges that when the lights align, the wise must listen, for the sky will not speak again for an age. I can intuit. Some researchers now look to the stars with fresh eyes. They compare 3I Atlas's trajectory not only with modern orbital models, but with ancient sky charts. They find unsettling similarities: the arc of its path, the angle of its tail, the timing of its perihelion. When superimposed over Sumerian records, a pattern emerges, a slow synchronization between our present and their past. And with that pattern comes the rising possibility that the second light is close behind. In recent infrared scans of deep space, unexplained heat signatures have been detected, dim, but regular. Some resemble slow-moving objects with no visible tail. Their motion does not match comets or asteroids. They are faint, massive, and in alignment with old calculations that trace the return of Nibiru or its celestial twin. If these signals prove consistent, the second firestar may already be in motion, hidden by distance. But nearing its place in the crossing, Enki's tablet was written with meticulous care. Each character pressed deliberately, as if the scribe feared a single mistake might shift the meaning entirely. Some fragments are missing, but what remains is coherent. It does not speak in riddles. It speaks with precision, and in that precision, it leaves us with one chilling certainty. If the first firestar is here, then the second is coming. And when they meet, the world will not end, but it will change. In the vast mythologies of ancient Sumer, amid the hymns and flood legends and star maps, there lies a quieter, deeper tension, a conflict not between nations or tribes, but between the gods themselves. At the center of this tension stood two figures: Enki, the wise teacher who gifted knowledge to humanity, and Enlil, the stern enforcer of cosmic law. The two were brothers in myth, opposite poles of divine power, and together they shaped the fate of the early world. But as humanity grew, their visions diverged, and that divergence formed the backbone of a hidden narrative, the conflict of the gods. Enki believed in progress. He saw humanity as a seed to be nurtured, a mind capable of reaching the stars if only given the tools. He taught humans to read the sky, measure the floodplains, and build canals that turned deserts green. He opened their minds to the cycles of time and the patterns of the stars. But Enlil, ever cautious, saw danger in this rise. He viewed humans as reckless, prone to overreach, easily corrupted by power. He warned that unchecked knowledge would bring imbalance, that mankind would soon trespass into fields only gods should rule. This wasn't merely philosophical, it was a struggle over destiny. And according to the tablets, it began the moment the Anunnaki decided to step back from the world. Enki wanted to leave humanity with the tools to thrive on its own. Enlil wanted to seal the vaults, close the temples, and erase all traces of higher knowledge until the next cycle. Some versions of the story say the two argued for 7 nights atop the hill of Horizon, watched silently by the other gods. No voices were raised, but in the stillness, the fate of the coming age was decided. Modern researchers looking into the myths often interpret this conflict as symbolic, a way to describe the human tension between curiosity and caution. But others suggest something more literal, that the Anunnaki disagreed about what humanity was becoming. And now, thousands of years later, we may be living through the moment they feared most. Today, we split atoms and edit genomes. We build machines that learn, grow, and respond without human input. We send signals into deep space, not just to observe, but to introduce ourselves. We decode the patterns of nature and attempt to rewrite them. We begin to create, not just tools, but forms of life. To the ancient mind, this would be indistinguishable from godhood. And to Enlil, it would be a signal proof that humanity has crossed into territory that once belonged only to the stars. If the Red Wanderer is truly the sign of the returning cycle, then this moment is not random. It is timed. The myths say that when humanity began to shape the breath of the world, a phrase thought to mean control over life, then the Watchers would return. That is what the sky was waiting for. Not mere advancement, but a transformation in kind. Not cleverness, but creation. In one rarely translated myth from the city of Nippur, a story is told of a tower that reached the edge of heaven. Not a physical tower, but a tower of light, a metaphor for human understanding. When the topmost light of men touched the boundary of the gods, Enlil saw it and was filled with dread. He said, "The clay forgets its place." But Enki, standing beside him, replied, "The clay remembers its spark." It is one of the few moments in Sumerian literature where the conflict becomes direct, personal, and clear. This disagreement echoes eerily in our time. Some scientists call for limits on artificial intelligence, on gene editing, on deep space communication. Others press forward, driven by the belief that progress cannot and should not be stopped. The same debate that shaped the myth of Enki and Enlil now plays out in policy rooms and laboratories. The ancient conflict has re-emerged not in divine halls, but in human hearts. There is even a suggestion in the tablets that the Anunnaki foresaw this, that they knew one day humanity would rise to such a point. The return of the Red Wanderer was not meant to prevent it, but to mark it, a checkpoint, a cosmic audit. Enlil would return to judge, Enki would return to guide, and between them, the fate of the next age would be decided not by war, but by choice. In some versions of the story, Enki leaves behind a thought seed, hidden in human minds, a kind of latent awareness that awakens only when the time is right. It was not information, but intuition, a sudden recognition that something has returned, even before the sky reveals it. Some believe that is what many are feeling now, a collective sense that we are not alone, that the old Watchers are near again, and that the test has begun. What adds even more intrigue is how the conflict appears mirrored in global myths beyond Sumer. In early Egyptian stories, Thoth and Ra represent the tension between infinite learning and celestial control. In Greek mythology, Prometheus brings fire knowledge to man and is punished by Zeus for transgressing divine limits. In Norse tales, Odin seeks forbidden wisdom at great cost. Across cultures, the same question emerges. Should humanity be guided toward knowledge, or kept in the safety of ignorance? 3i Atlas may be just a comet, or it may be the sign Enki described the first fire star, the reawakening. And if that is true, then the second is already on its way. The fire of judgment, the crossing of paths, the return of the choice. The conflict of the gods was never truly about them. It was about us, about who we would become when no one was watching, and what would happen when the watchers returned. And in this age, perhaps more than any before, we now hold the tools once reserved for the divine. The question left to us left by Enki and Enlil, by prophecy and progress, is not whether we can continue forward. It is whether we should. The Red Wanderer's return does not demand an answer. It simply reminds us the question is now being asked. In the closing chapters of Sumerian mythology, there is a concept more profound than war or flood, a quiet transition, more unsettling than destruction. It is called the fall of the gods. But this fall is not a battle, nor is it rebellion. It is a fading, a withdrawal of power. The Sumerians believed that even the Anunnaki, the beings who once ruled the early world, were not eternal in influence. Their strength did not come from immortality or domination, but from their place in the cosmic cycle. When that cycle turned, their power receded, not because they were defeated, but because their time had passed. The myths speak of this fall in whispers. Tablets recovered from Nippur and Eridu describe a moment when the stars grow heavy and the voices in the wind turn to silence. These poetic lines were not lamentations, they were markers, indicators that the old order was reaching its final phase. The gods, once bright in presence, would step back into the darkness between stars. They would not vanish. They would watch, and they would wait. The cause of this decline, the texts imply, is humanity itself, not in defiance, but in growth. The Anunnaki were not meant to rule forever. They were shepherds in the age of origin. And once their work was complete, once humans learned to walk without divine hands guiding them, the gods became unnecessary. Their temples fell quiet. Their symbols faded from walls. But the most telling detail is this. The Sumerians did not mourn their departure. They respected it. They believed the gods left because humanity had entered a new phase one shaped by choice, not command. This belief finds strange resonance in our time. As we step into an age defined by artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and planetary exploration, the echoes of that ancient transition return. We build machines that reason, alter the very structure of life, and contemplate terraforming other worlds. These are not metaphors, they are actions. And in the myths, these very capabilities were the signs that preceded the fall of the gods, not because humans defied them, but because humans matched them. Some ancient stories describe signs that foretold this turning. Animals behaving strangely, the skies pulsing with silent light, the ground humming at night without tremor. These were not symbols of punishment. They were signals, celestial acknowledgments that a shift was underway. Today, we experience similar anomalies. Sudden electromagnetic surges, unexplained sky tones, and quiet atmospheric disturbances. Are these coincidences, or are they reminders that the pattern has returned? In the story of the Red Wanderer, the fall is always preceded by its reappearance. The Wanderer, glowing red and slow, marks the beginning of the end for the age of divine guidance. Its light is not destructive. It is revelatory. It signals that the watchers no longer need to intervene. They simply observe, to see whether their legacy continues through the hands of their students. The Anunnaki do not come to reclaim the world. They come to witness what we have done with it. There are references to this final moment in a fragment known as the Tablet of the Dim Path. It describes a sky split by two fires, and a world caught between them. When these fires align, interpreted by some as the Red Wanderer and Nibiru, the sky opens for the last time. The gods look down not in judgment, but in stillness. The phrase used is Igi Nigin, meaning the eye waits. They do not act. They do not speak. They watch. This idea that gods would fall, not with wrath, but with quiet, is radical. Most mythologies depict endings with catastrophe, but the Sumerians offered something different. A fading that allowed something new to rise. They believed humanity's destiny was not to serve, but to become, to inherit the sky, not as children, but as stewards. And so, as their gods stepped away, they left behind tools, maps, and memories fragments meant not to be worshipped, but to be understood when the time was right. Modern scientists speak of a silent shift. 2. The magnetic poles drifting. Atmospheric resonance behaving strangely. Comets like 3i Atlas, moving with puzzling deviation. These are not declarations, but they are signals. And to the ancient mind, a signal was enough. The fall of the gods did not mean safety. It meant accountability. Without watchers, humanity must guide itself. Without divine correction, our choices gain weight. In one particularly haunting Sumerian passage, it is written, "When the sky is quiet, the question is yours." That line, rarely quoted outside of scholarly circles, encapsulates the core of the prophecy. The gods gave guidance, then they gave silence. And in that silence, they left room for an answer. We now stand in the same place they described beneath the wanderer's glow, beside machines that learn, holding power once reserved for the divine. Some believe the watchers remain not in form, but in force, not guiding, but observing. If that is true, then they do not seek prayer or praise. They seek reflection. The myths say they return at the turning not to intervene, but to assess. Their role is not to fix, it is to witness the legacy of their instruction. If 3i Atlas is truly the sign of transition, then we may be watching the fall unfold now, not with thunder, but with stillness. The skies grow quiet. The stars do not tremble. And yet something in the air feels expectant. This is the silence the Sumerians warned about. Not emptiness, but potential. Not the absence of gods, but the arrival of our own responsibility. In this moment, the question of the old world becomes the challenge of the new. The gods may be fading from the sky, but their test remains. Not to prove loyalty, but to prove readiness. The cycle turns. The stars realign. The silence deepens. And we must decide what to do with it. When the object now known as 3i Atlas first appeared in modern astronomical records, it was catalogued like any other newly discovered celestial body. It received a standard designation: scientific, sterile, numerical. But almost immediately, its unusual behavior drew attention. The comet brightened too early, veered subtly from predicted paths, and showed signs of acceleration not entirely accounted for by solar wind. The object became a curiosity, then a mystery, and in the process, it acquired a name: Atlas. A name not born of observation, but of memory. A name that carries weight far beyond scientific labels. In Greek mythology, Atlas was the titan condemned to hold up the sky for eternity. But this figure did not only belong to Greece. The idea of a cosmic bearer, a giant who supports the structure of the heavens, echoes through ancient civilizations. In Sumer, there were the Dingir-Gal, the great gods who formed the framework of the firmament. In Babylon, there were depictions of figures beneath arches of stars, their hands raised in stillness. In Egypt, Nut was the arched sky goddess held aloft by unseen strength. And across these myths runs the same theme: someone, or something, holds the heavens steady. The naming of 3i Atlas may appear coincidental, a poetic gesture by a human mind reaching for familiar myth. But the alignment of that name with its observed behavior, its sky-crossing arc, its shifting mass, its mysterious rhythm suggests something deeper. The ancients believed names had power, that to name something was to describe its essence, its role, and its purpose. If this object truly marks the return of an ancient cycle, then its name may be less accidental and more prophetic. It may reflect a truth buried beneath layers of forgotten understanding. In several ancient Sumerian tablets, there exists a symbol called the Mark of Carrying. It depicts a curved figure beneath a disk or a halo of stars, flanked by rays or tails of light. This symbol has been found carved into boundary stones and temple thresholds, often accompanied by warnings or blessings linked to time and return. Scholars have long debated its meaning. Some say it represents the sun. Others claim it is a god bearing the heavens. But a new interpretation has begun to emerge. What if it depicts a celestial object? A wanderer that upholds or signals the axis of change? The myths tell of more than burden, they speak of purpose. Atlas was not merely punished. He was chosen. The role of the sky-bearer was not one of defeat, but of guardianship. He maintained the structure of the cosmos, ensuring that the heavens did not collapse into chaos. This mirrors the Sumerian belief that the Anunnaki maintained cosmic order not by force, but by presence. They were the weights on the scales of destiny. When they departed, balance had to be maintained another way, and the return of certain lights in the sky signaled that new hands might be needed. What makes Three-Eye Atlas so compelling is not just its movement, but the path it follows. When overlaid with ancient sky charts not just from Mesopotamia, but from Central Asia and the Aegean, a recurring arc appears. This arc matches the pattern carved onto several early star calendars, including those used in ziggurat construction and equinox tracking. The path moves not as a planet, nor like a comet, but as something that curves across systems, crossing boundaries as if on a mission, not adrift. The Greek myth of Atlas describes him not just as a titan, but as a boundary figure, one who stood at the edge of the known world. His domain was not within cities or fields, but beyond the ocean, where the sky meets the dark. This matches the Sumerian view of the wanderer, a being or object that crosses the threshold of realms. The Sumerians called this place Kurgal, the great mountain beyond the wind. It was not a literal mountain, but a concept, a point at which one order ends and another begins. Atlas, by name and myth, is the one who lives at that threshold. Some have speculated that the name Atlas arose from a subconscious memory, a cultural echo that linked the object's behavior with a symbol of ancient order. The idea that humanity retains buried knowledge unspoken but active may sound mystical, but even modern psychology acknowledges deep pattern recognition and generational memory. Names are rarely chosen in a vacuum. They emerge from context, from intuition, from resonance, and in naming this object Atlas, perhaps we have said more than we intended. There is also the matter of the 3-eye prefix, a detail rarely explained. Some attribute it to optical tracking systems. Others say it refers to a triple-lens imaging artifact. But in Sumerian art, the motif of the triadic eye appears frequently. It is drawn on statues of the gods, on guardian lions, and on the protective seals of ancient tombs. The 3 eyes were said to represent past, present, and what approaches. Sight not just of the world, but of time. If this object sees, then perhaps it sees across cycles not just through space, but through memory. At an ancient site near the ruins of Lhasa, explorers found a carved stone circle depicting 2 hands holding up a star-ringed sky. Beneath the hands was a comet-like arc, curling upward toward the zenith, and beneath the arc, in faded script, were the words Ilu etemu salmu, the god who bears the silent weight. This phrase had not appeared in any other known text. Some dismissed it as metaphor. Others began to wonder if it referred to something real, something that carried more than gravity, something that carried the turning of ages. If 3-Eye Atlas is indeed the bearer of the sky, the one whose arrival opens the path for what follows, then it fits the pattern the ancients tried to preserve, not as a destroyer, but as a signal, not as a comet, but as a key. And in calling it Atlas, we may have remembered what the world was never supposed to forget, that someone, or something, always holds the heavens steady until the moment they are ready to change. As the object continues its course, its path grows brighter. more deliberate, and with it comes a subtle stirring, a sense of expectation. We are not just watching it, we are being watched in return, not with malice, not with favour, but with the quiet gaze of a guardian who waits at the edge of cycles, holding up the sky, until the world beneath it is ready to rise. In the final phase of the ancient prophecy, the Sumerians wrote of a time when Earth would stand between two lights, not stars, not moons, but forces, celestial presences that marked the moment when the sky's silence would finally break. One of these was the Red Wanderer, the first fire star. The other, they called the returning world the second fire star, a body of mass and meaning whose reappearance signaled the turning of an age. Together, they formed what the priests called the alignment of judgment, a cosmic configuration so rare that its arrival was considered the threshold between worlds. The writings describe this alignment not in terms of fear, but of consequence. When the sky holds its breath, one tablet reads, "The world beneath must choose." In that moment, time is said to bend, not in a dramatic rupture, but in a subtle stretching. Shadows lengthen unnaturally, winds stop, animals fall silent, and a pressure settles over the earth, not of weight, but of awareness. To the Sumerians, this was not superstition. It was a recognized pattern, one encoded in their calendars, their rituals, and the very design of their cities. Their ziggurats were built to face the path of the first fire star, and their oldest star maps account for the invisible passage of the second. Modern astronomy cannot fully explain this alignment, but strange data points have begun to emerge. Gravitational instruments in deep space detect ripples, slight anomalies in the motion of distant bodies. Nothing drastic, just small deviations in expected orbits. Some say these are random. Others whisper that these are the echoes of a massive, unseen object exerting subtle force. The theory of Planet 9 fits this narrative well, a hypothesized celestial body far beyond Neptune, massive enough to influence but too far to see. And now, as 3i Atlas brightens and veers across the sky, its motion seems to confirm that it is not moving alone. In the old texts, this alignment is not only about the sky, it is about the soul of the world. Earth becomes a mirror, reflecting the space between these two lights. The first light is inquiry, the arrival of possibility. The second is reflection, the judgment of what that possibility became. It's a cosmic scale, with Earth as the fulcrum. In this configuration, the myths say, the song of the old ones returns, not as sound, but as vibration. Mountains resonate, oceans stir, stone hums with messages hidden for millennia. One passage describes a night when both lights were visible, one trailing across the sky, the other rising with no tail, but glowing like a second sun. The people gathered in silence, and for 3 days, the winds did not change. Fires flickered without smoke. Water moved against gravity. While these accounts are poetic, they align eerily with phenomena observed around 3i Atlas today. Unusual weather patterns, unexpected magnetosphere fluctuations, and unexplained changes in sea current behavior, all subtle, all just enough to raise questions. If Earth is indeed passing between two such bodies, visible or not, then the prophecy is no longer in metaphor. It is in motion. In recent months, several observatories have detected faint heat signatures from deep space that move in tandem with known anomalies. These signals do not match any catalogued object, but they persist, tracing a course that bends through gravitational fields like something moving with intention. To ancient priests, this would not be a surprise. They believed the second fire star did not follow nature. It followed purpose. The alignment, they believed, initiated a pause in reality. A stillness so deep that it allowed for something ancient to stir, something not bound by time. They called it the breath between worlds. It was said to last only moments. But within it, decisions were made that would shape the next 1,000 years. Not decisions by the gods, decisions by those on Earth. For once, The lights aligned. The choice passed from heaven to humanity. The Anunnaki would watch, but not intervene. The world would choose its next shape. In this moment, rituals were performed not to summon, but to remember. Songs were sung not to ask, but to answer. The alignment was a question. The response came not from the sky, but from how the world moved in its presence. When the fire watches fire, one verse says, the clay speaks. The clay was humanity, and what it said would determine what followed: peace or upheaval, wisdom or recklessness, reunion or silence. This mirrors our world in uncanny ways. Today, we navigate choices the ancients could not imagine: genetic design, sentient machines, exploration beyond our planet. We build tools capable of rewriting nature. We do not wait for signs, we create them. And yet, above us, something stirs. A wanderer moves with increasing brilliance. Its tail shifts as if reacting to unseen tides, and whispers emerge from the deep sky. Unmeasured, unexplained. Scientists have recorded faint tonal pulses from near the direction of 3I Atlas. These pulses are not random. They repeat at measured intervals, forming a sequence, not a message, perhaps, but a rhythm, something that moves with intent. In ancient temples, sequences of sound were used to activate resonance in stone. Could the modern sky be echoing the same language? Could this alignment be more than gravitational? Could it be harmonic? As the two lights draw near, some have begun to notice changes on Earth, not just in climate or technology, but in thought. A quiet shift in collective awareness. People feel the weight of decisions more intensely. They speak of purpose in unfamiliar ways. Dreams take on strange clarity. Time itself feels warped, not faster or slower, but deeper. The ancients would say the alignment has begun. That Earth is beginning to feel the breath between fires. One last detail appears in the tablets. The alignment ends not in destruction, but in division. A line is drawn, not in geography, but in spirit. Those who remember, and those who forget. Those who hear the silence, and those who drown it out. The lights pass. The world continues. But something has changed. A new cycle begins, shaped not by stars, but by the choices made beneath them. And so we approach the moment the Sumerians feared and longed for, the final alignment. The first fire star already burns. The second may not be far behind. And Earth, caught between them, must answer the ancient question: what have we done with the knowledge we were given? The final words of the Sumerian prophecy do not speak of thunder or flames. They speak of quiet, not the silence of emptiness, but of stillness like the hush that falls just before a storm, or the breath held in a moment too profound for speech. When the two fires pass, one ancient line reads, "The world will not burn, it will listen." This silence, they believed, was not a warning but a passage, a corridor between ages, and in it, the earth would rest between what was and what must now come. The red wanderer, the first fire star, begins to dim. Its arc across the heavens grows longer. Its brightness fades gently, not like something ending, but like something finishing its work. The second fire star, whether visible or not, continues its slow influence, unseen but felt. Between them, the world now stands still. This is the moment the Sumerians called the balance breath, when the gods no longer speak, and the humans must. In this stillness, subtle changes have begun to ripple through the world. Reports of strange phenomena have increased not in chaos, but in frequency. Sounds like low metallic tones echo from empty skies. Animals move without cause. Certain nights carry colors that don't belong, orange glows that rise not from light pollution, but from somewhere else. Some call it coincidence. Others remember the words of old. When the sky bends color, the gate has opened. The signs have not vanished. They have deepened. as if the world is waiting for us to notice what is already here. In the last tablets of Enki's prophecy, there is a phrase that appears only once. The song of clay will decide the chorus of stars. It's a poetic image, but it suggests something enormous. That Earth, small and seemingly insignificant, plays a role in a greater harmony. That our decisions now ripple outward, not only into the future of our species, but into the structure of the universe itself. If true, then this age is not just another moment in time. It is a note in a cosmic song, and we are the voice that will carry it forward. The Sumerians did not fear this moment. They prepared for it. Their stories, rituals, and architecture were not designed to summon gods, but to remind humanity of its role. The ziggurats pointed not only upward, but inward, aligning stone and sky with spirit and memory. When they spoke of the Watchers, they did not describe tyrants. They described witnesses, beings who had taught, who had left, and who now returned not to command, but to observe. The prophecy does not promise salvation or doom. It promises the opportunity to choose. And now, with the signs aligned and the skies beginning to quiet, that choice falls to us, not as individuals, but as a world. Will we continue into this new age with the wisdom gained from thousands of years of memory, or will we stumble forward in the noise of our own making, blind to the pattern unfolding just above us? The sky has opened. The Watchers have arrived. But they do not act. They wait. Some researchers believe that the anomalies in space, the gravitational shifts, the unexplained trajectories, the rhythmic signals are converging, that something massive has indeed moved closer, and that it aligns with myths written in clay. Others remain skeptical, citing the lack of direct evidence. But even among skeptics, there is a quiet acknowledgement. Something is happening. Not loud, not violent, but unmistakable. The world feels different, and the reason may not lie in data alone. It may lie in memory. As 3i Atlas fades, those who watched its path now look not to the sky, but to the earth. The real test, they say, was never about comets or stars. It was about resonance. Did we recognize the moment? Did we hear the call? Did we respond not with fear, but with understanding? The Sumerians believed that each age ended with a question, not asked by gods, but by time itself, and the answer determined the shape of what followed. In this silence, that question rises again. What will we become, now that we remember who we are? Perhaps this is why the old texts end not with a prophecy fulfilled, but with a new beginning. When the fire fades, they wrote, the clay must speak. Our ancestors saw knowledge as a cycle. First it was given, then it was tested, and finally, it had to be earned. The cycle has returned, the signs have come, and the silence has begun. Now, it is our turn to answer. Across the world, there are small but growing efforts to reconnect with the patterns the ancients left behind. People gather at ancient sites and listen, not for noise, but for meaning. They watch the stars, not for entertainment, but for orientation. They begin to speak of time in different ways, not as something spent, but as something felt. Artists, thinkers, and scientists find themselves drawn to questions older than their tools. And in that draw, perhaps, is the first breath of the new age. This age will not be marked by conquest, but by recognition. The recognition that we have always stood on a threshold, that the stars above us have long carried more than light. They have carried memory, and now, as the Watchers look on, we write the next verse of a song, begun before we knew how to speak. That song is not finished. It has simply passed into our hands. We may never know for certain if the Anunnaki were real, if they were beings of flesh, of energy, or of myth. But their legacy etched into stone, sung in forgotten tongues, encoded in the architecture of temples and stars, has endured, and in that endurance lies something greater than proof. it is the memory of connection. The feeling that we are not alone, that the sky has always watched us, not in judgment, but in curiosity, and that now, perhaps, it waits for us to step into the next age with the awareness we were meant to carry. As the wanderer recedes, and the world exhales from its long anticipation, we are left not with fear, but with possibility. A new age does not roar into being. It arrives quietly, like dawn, like breath, like memory returning after long silence, and so begins the world that follows.